What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Time Podcast. We are coming to you on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, June 29th. And we were going to start with the draft, but just kind of our second review of the draft. But instead, we are starting off with some breaking news. Three-time NBA All-Star Julius Randle intends to sign a new 3-year, $100 million deal to stay with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Sources tell ESPN the deal includes a player option for the 2027-2028 season. That is breaking news. It just dropped 3 minutes ago by ESPN's Shams Charania, and that was followed up by a quote tweet by Shams, who said, Wolves officials and Randall's agents, Aaron Mintz and Steve Human of CAA, have been ironing out details of this new deal. Minnesota locks in Randall and Naz Reid over the last several days. So Minnesota making moves to protect that core around Anthony Edwards. They're all in on this core, it seems like, Daryl. Your overall thoughts on not only the Naz Reid deal, but now this new Julius Randle deal?
Well, first of all, the Naz Reid deal, I really like the deal. He's a 25-year-old guy, hadn't reached his prime yet, and you saw what he was able to do last season, stretching the floor, running the floor, and also being a defensive presence. I think that was a great, win by Milwaukee, by the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the other thing with that is, a lot of these deals have been 3 and 4 year deals. Nas signed a 5-year deal, which tells me Minnesota wanted to be around that 25-ish range. And they said, listen, maybe we'll throw in another year. So therefore, you're in a situation where you get that 100+ million. I think it was a good deal. It was a fair deal for Minnesota. I think it was a fair deal for Nas. He got 5 years. He's got some security. Also is able to get, a guy who's made a big difference in their team on the hook for 5 years at $25 million a year, which while us regular people say is a lot of money, but in the realm of the NBA, that's an economical deal. Then you turn around and you sign Randall for a 3-year, $100 million deal, around $33 million a year. However, he'll be 35 when the deal ends, and probably more than likely he'll be kind of put out the pasture at that point. A lot of people are going to stress on how he looked in the last few games of the Western Conference Finals, but for his body of work, Randall did a pretty good job last season in Minnesota, his first year, coming off of that trade. And to your point, Minnesota is keeping that core together and see if they can run it back.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think when it comes to Minnesota out west, I think it all depends on Ant Edwards and obviously the players around him. But I think it falls on Ant Edwards, right, and Rudy Gobert. Those are your top two. It's going to fall on them. Minnesota, they had a decision to make a couple of years ago, and they chose to move from Cat, right? That was their decision. And now they seem to believe in this core, and there's not a lot of room they can make now. This is the core they're going to stick with for the next couple of years, and they'll have to stay put on this core. Another deal that got done that I didn't even realize, but it was also tweeted 2 hours ago, was Oklahoma City Thunder center / forward Jalen Williams is signing a new 3-year, $24 million contract extension with the franchise. Sources tell ESPN Thunder declined Williams' $2.1 million team option and negotiated the new raise with his agents Marcus Monk and Sean Kennedy of XL Sports. Jalen Williams didn't play a lot in the NBA Finals. He was a little more prevalent in the other rounds for the Thunder, but he is still an important piece nonetheless. He's the brother of Jaden Williams, the Williams brothers, both in Oklahoma City. I heard people, there was Thunder fans talking about maybe they're going to trade him. Some diehard Thunder fans were right on this. They didn't think he was going to get traded. They had a feeling that this was going to happen, and they get what they want. Jalen Williams staying with the team. I don't think there's really much to say here, Daryl. They're keeping the guys that won them a championship. Nothing else much to say there. The Thunder are going to be the Thunder next year. I want to pivot over back to Phoenix. I don't think we talked about the trade Phoenix made in abundance when we covered the draft a couple nights ago. I do think Phoenix made the right move. They drafted their center, and then they also traded for Mark Williams. I like the move for Phoenix, right? I said I don't know how much Mark Williams plays. That's always going to be a cause for concern when it comes to Mark Williams. but I don't. It's not. I'm not going to hate the trade. I think it is a good trade. And they're doing the right thing here, building a nice group of guys around Devin Booker and Jalen Green. I think Phoenix has a lot of thinking to do this offseason. How are they going to fill out this roster? Who's going to play point guard? There's still a lot of questions, but I think this was the right step for Phoenix.
Yeah, I think so as well, right? Because you had a hole in the middle last season. Obviously, you jettisoned Durant over to Houston. The team is a little bit of influx, right? You need a little bit of a difference look for this team, and I think next going into the next season, they're going to definitely look a lot different. You're talking about a guy who could get you 28 a game, who's gone, and now you got you kind of, in my opinion, you're still stuck with a guy like Bradley Beal after he's got 2 seasons left at 53 and 57 million dollars. So there's not going to be a lot Phoenix is going to be able to do just because your highest paid player is probably one of your weakest defensive players, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a lot of talk about fights in the locker room in Phoenix. Yeah, I can see why. That Bradley Beal got a lot handed to him in DC, and he got exposed. And I think there was probably a lot of conversation around that. Phoenix is, they're going to be in flux. They're not going to be a significant, difference maker in the West. But I think the moves, getting those bigs and getting those younger bigs, is an opportunity to go in the right direction, especially when you've got Devin Booker on the hook for 3 more years, including this upcoming season at 53, 57, and 61.
Yeah, that Phoenix has a lot of thinking to do. That is for sure. Um, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Do you think they can make the playoffs?
The way they're constructed, no.
Oh well,
Because
if
I
they
know,
get Beal off their books.
well, yeah, but I don't see if they get Beal out, because here's the other problem, right? Them being over the apron doesn't allow them the buyout piece as well. So
Yeah,
they, when you talk about stuck, you're really stuck with this guy, and no one's worth their weight in salt is going to touch Bradley Beal with a 100-foot pole, let alone a 10-foot pole. So I think they're stuck with Bradley Beal. He probably will play 50 games this year and come down with an injury. It wouldn't surprise me based off of their draft that they look to maybe have him come off the bench. He's
yeah,
such a liability on defense, and as you saw him last year and the year prior, there was nothing that stood out for Bradley Beal on a good team. So
yeah.
he at this stage in his career, in my opinion, at 32 years old, he's a bench player.
He definitely is. I think Phoenix. You got to find a way to get rid of him. You gotta try. I mean, you
That's the
gotta
challenge
try.
with that's the challenge with the hard cap, man. And that luxury, because again, it minimizes all of your flexibility. I'm sure they'd be willing to pay him 45 million a year just to go away, but they can't even do that.
Yeah. All right. Let's pivot on to well we've actually got a lot of news that we can cover in this one today. Let's start with Miami before we get to the other big three that I want to talk about. Restricted free agent Davion Mitchell intends to sign a 2-year, $24 million deal to return to the Miami Heat, sources tell ESPN. Heat officials and Mitchell's agent, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but just know his agent negotiated the new fully guaranteed contract. Congrats to Davion Mitchell getting that money. Not only does he get paid 24 million, Daryl, he gets to live out in Miami. I don't think you can ask for anything better,
With no
and
state tax. With no
no
state
state
tax.
tax. He's living his best life out there. I saw some Laker fans, right, because with all the Andrew Wiggins smoke that is being propelled the Lakers' way to acquire Andrew Wiggins, a lot of people feel this gets the Lakers closer to Andrew Wiggins. I wouldn't say all that, and honestly, I don't know how I would feel about Andrew Wiggins. Everybody really wants Wiggins, and I'm just kind of sitting here like, I mean, I guess I don't really feel the need to want Wiggins. I kind of get it. I know we need wings, but I at that point I don't know. I don't know if I'd want Wiggins, but overall for Miami, I think this is just them trying to keep a young guy in Davion Mitchell who's really good defensively. Offensively, he's all right. He's not the best offensively. Um,
He's who he
overall,
is. he's who he is offensively at this point.
Yeah, yeah. He's a solid role player. I think he could definitely be on a championship team in a good role player role. Miami, like we've talked about for a while, they've got some decisions to make. I went on a little rant about them because they couldn't acquire Kevin Durant because they wanted to keep guys like Jaime Jaquez, Davion Mitchell, and all these other role
Again,
players.
Duncan Robinson.
Dunker, yeah.
It,
So it's
he's
just
coming his last year as well. He's just under 20 million this season, and he'll be an unrestricted free agent in the summer. So I wouldn't look for Duncan Robinson to be a Miami Heat next year.
so I just we'll see what Miami does. I don't really know what they're thinking. Obviously, there was a report that if they didn't land KD, they're gonna try to get Jonathan Kuminga. So we'll see if they can land Kuminga. But at this point, I'd rather see Kuminga head to Chicago. And speaking of Chicago, what is Bulls management doing up there in that office? The Chicago Bulls traded Lonzo Ball to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Isaac Okoro, one-on-one, straight up, no silly business. You don't see this often. Just straight up Isaac Okoro, who can't shoot the three ball, for Lonzo Ball, who, I mean, Lonzo's a very good player. I mean, he's a really good point guard. DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine spoke about it at length when the Bulls were number one in the East. I think it was 2021. They said the minute Lonzo went down, they kind of knew it was over, right? They said Lonzo was the one that he was the oil to the engine. Everything was running through Lonzo in that Bulls team when they were at their peak, right? In 2021, they were the number one seed, stuff like that. When Lonzo went down, they all kind of knew, all right, it's over. I tweeted you and I asked, does this mean they're getting rid of Garland? And you said, yeah, it could be, but it
Well,
could also be they just need a defensive point guard, which we elaborated on as well, that they do
right.
need a better defensive point guard. But I don't know if I see Lonzo coming off the bench. I think that's my issue. But you know what? If he comes off the bench, he comes off the bench.
Well, here's the thing. I wouldn't say he wouldn't come off the bench, and the reason why I wouldn't say it because he's not offensively more gifted than the two in front of him. The other thing is coming off of he was out for almost 2 years. He's not the player he was 5 years ago. From a lateral perspective, moving around on defense, yeah, still better than both those guys on defense. But I just think he'd be a great guy coming off the bench for a team like Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
I still think Cleveland's got to do some other things to solidify their place in the East, but I'm not sure if that Garland deal is going to ever get done with him going anywhere else. I think that'll be the deal right there. I think their next move, if there is a move, would be Garland, right? And then, yeah, to your point, yeah, you put Ball in the starting lineup, and now you've got a respectable defensive backcourt. Because right now, the way it's set, you don't.
And looking at the Bulls, I don't know if you saw this graphic on Twitter. The Bulls have traded DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Alex Caruso, and Lonzo Ball. And you would think in the guys that they traded, it would warrant a couple first round picks. You think it would warrant so much more. But here's what they have gotten in return: Josh Giddey, Kevin Herter, Chris Duarte, Pacers legend Chris Duarte, Isaac Isaac Okoro, Zach Collins, Trey Jones, their own 2025 first round pick, and 2 second round picks. This any other GM in the league would have been fired after the first trade. A GM would have been fired after the Alex Caruso Josh Giddey trade, because that trade was criticized to hell by everybody on Twitter, incling myself.
Yeah, I
This
can't.
is ridiculous. What are they doing up there?
I can't argue that point, man. I can't. Maybe the GM has some pictures of someone in the front office that are damning or something. But none of those guys are Hall of Fame guys right now as it stands. So let's pump our brakes a little bit. But still, you gave up a whole lot of quality players and you didn't get a whole lot in return. So that's the thing, right? And you're talking about Chicago. You're talking about the second largest market, or third largest market in the league. And if you're going into the season and your lead guy is Josh Giddey, well, I'll tell you because
out of the trade pieces, I got you.
Because Kobe White he's in the atmosphere by himself, in my opinion. He's going to break the bank next year. And I got a feeling in this season is his last, maybe his last. He's unrestricted after coming up in the summer, but I don't see any reason why if I'm Kobe White or his handlers, we'd be willing to sign on in Chicago with what they've done. I wouldn't even look to do that at all.
January 8th, 2022, the number one seed Chicago Bulls are looking scary. That was a tweet by NBA on ESPN. There was a picture of Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Lonzo Ball. That Bulls team actually had some hope. And then Lonzo's knee, and it was all over from there for Chicago. It is unfortunate, right? Because I've always been a Lonzo fan. I've always thought Lonzo was a really good player. He does make people around him better when he plays point guard. So it was unfortunate to see him go down. And not only that, I'm a semi-Bulls fan. I don't hate the Bulls. So it was unfortunate. And then my guy Alex Caruso was obviously on the Bulls. So, I wanted to see them succeed because the Lakers lowballed him that offseason and he went to Chicago. So I wanted to see them succeed. It's very unfortunate that happened to Lonzo and that Bulls roster. And now it seems like they're trying to figure some things out. I like their draft that they had on Thursday night. Still a lot of questions, but I think obviously they took a couple steps forward, and then this trade it felt like a couple steps back. Not because they traded Lonzo. I know they were going to trade Lonzo, but you got Isaac Okoro in return, who I mean his ceiling is already decided, and so is his floor. He can't shoot the three. He's not the best player. I mean I just feels like you gave up Lonzo for nothing. Like I feel like 2 second-round picks would have been better than Isaac Okoro.
Well, it helps with the salary piece. But here's the thing about Chicago. As I'm looking here, they and started so as it stands now, going into the summer, they will have about $30 million tied up in salaries going into the summer next year. That's it. That's it. So maybe they're looking to get a two-headed monster because they will have the money.
They got money.
They will have the money next summer. And that doesn't include anything with Kobe White, but they got crazy money available next summer. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe we're gonna do a San Antonio. We're gonna clean the cupboard. Hopefully this year we get into the lottery. We get the top 1 or 2 picks, and then we start from there.
We will have to see. And then the biggest news, which dropped 2 days ago, Masai Ujiri is out as vice chairman and president of the Toronto Raptors. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment and Masai Ujiri have decided to part ways as Ujiri wants entering the final year of his contract, sources tell ESPN. That's a big fish. That is a big fish out there in the pond, Daryl, and he is now available.
You know what I said immediately when I saw that?
What's up?
Somebody didn't like those draft picks. Something happened. There was a big discussion about who is and who isn't, who will and who won't. And I think that he says, I don't need this. I'm not staying here. And I just think that there was something there, absolutely, that drove this decision, man. There's no way a guy with that pedigree you can look at and say, well, yeah, he just decided to leave. I don't think that at all. I think there was something there to the point where, because it said they mutually agreed.
Yeah,
they mutually agreed. So for me, you get, you draft Colin Murray Boyles out of South Carolina, and then you turn around. That was at 9, and then I forget who it was. Then they got Elijah Martin from Florida. Maybe so. I mean, think about this, right? This is the same guy though that traded Pascal Siakam for a loaf of bread and some tennis shoes from the Pacers. So I mean, we know we give him a lot of credit.
Is he living off that Kawhi trade?
He could be, but I know the Pacers yoked him. We gave him a number 1 pick, Bruce Brown, and a couple of guys who were coming out of the G League who weren't playing, and I don't think they're on their roster. And Bruce Brown is a free agent this year and won't be in Toronto. So 2 years. Think about this: the trade was a draft day,
deadline.
Draft day, yeah. trade deadline deal. So Pascal, it's been a year and a half, and none of those players are here to be found. Last year we gave him two number ones. Last year,
Hasn't been much. Yeah.
I mean,
I
so I know we give him credit, but we gotta look at his whole body of work
no,
and
no, no, no. I
took
agree.
advantage of it. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, yeah, I mean, since that Kawhi trade, it hasn't been much, but when I mean the blame's on him, but it's also like I mean, Kawhi left you hanging. You kind of had to. It's hard to figure that thing out when you're kind of left with a roster that can compete, but it's like there's nobody that's that number one, you know. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's not all his fault, but it is his fault. It goes both ways, right? Kawhi left you high and dry after winning the chip. He went to LA. And hindsight 2020, it looks more bad for Kawhi than it does Toronto at the end of the day because Toronto still got a championship out of all of it.
Yeah.
And Kawhi hasn't been able to stay healthy. So in hindsight, Toronto honestly dodged a bullet. They've gotten to rebuild. And they're trying to figure things out. You've got Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. I think it's a playoff team at best. You've got RJ Barrett quickly. They've got some guys. They've got
Yeah.
a roster that can make the playoffs this year, I think,
You know,
in this Eastern Conference.
you know who's an underrated guy? Is that Jacob Patel? Jacob Patel is underrated. He's on the hook for 3 more years in Toronto as well.
Yeah.
So he's their big, right? He's their center. I wouldn't be surprised, man, if they slow walk it down. They'll have some cap space this coming summer, as many teams will. But in what you've got Barnes locked up, you've got Ingram locked up, you got Quickly locked up, and for the next 2 years and the third year is unrestricted free agent for Barrett, and the same as Jacob Patel, Poto. I said Jacob, yeah, Poto. And so you've got their core is in place, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to mess with their core, and they're under the cap. So I mean, because the cap is going to go up to another 173 million. So maybe this is the time where they decide to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's an opportunity. We'll see.
We will have to see. Off the top of your head, where would Masai Ujiri be the best fit at? Where should he go? What team could use him? I'm gonna
Chicago.
say, yeah. All right, yeah, yep. Great minds think alike. I was thinking Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, they need some direction, right? They need a guy with a history of making a difference.
Yeah.
And no GM hits on everything. Even the great Jerry West didn't hit on everything. He signed Mitch Kupchak, and
Yep.
you don't know who that is probably, but if you
No, I do.
yeah, he signed to a big free agent deal coming off of injuries, and he never
Materialized.
he never materialized. So everybody has a miss, and it's fair to have a miss. But going to Chicago would probably be good for him because they're a team that's in influx. Maybe Memphis, depending, because they've got some things that are going on there that that may need to be tweaked a little bit, or maybe the Kings. Kings have made some head scratching deals as well. You fire your coach, you get rid of your players. You get laughed at because you traded Tyrese Halliburton, but what they got in the return, hey, they got a pretty good guy in return who's been an all-star and is a double-double machine. So, I would say those 4 teams, but probably with Chicago leading the pack.
Yeah, Domantas Sabonis, he's won me a lot of money on my parlay. So thank you to Sabonis for getting those rebounds and points. Let's move over to everyone's favorite laughing stock right now in the head coaching search. The New York Knicks have reportedly reached out to Don Staley regarding their head coaching position. Daryl, do you believe this? Do you think there's any smoke to this? Do you think there's any truth to this maybe being a realistic possibility? I'm not going to ask you if you think it would succeed, but all I want to ask you is, do you think there's any truth, or is there any chance that this happens?
I mean, I think there's a chance it could happen. It's going to happen at some point. And
so you think Staley eventually does get to the league?
Maybe not Staley, but someone, right? Maybe
okay.
But here's the 2 part I like about it, right? I like that her name is being brought up because she's a coach, right? But here, and I'll just be frank about this. I believe, and this is a 2-way street, right? There are mannerisms and there are things that go in with players that may not be willing to accept a lady as their coach, vice versa, just like in the WNBA where there's males coaching ladies. I think sometimes there's a disconnect, in that dynamic that says we're not going to do this. And I think people get their heels stuck in and they say, no, we're not going to like it. Even if Dawn is the best candidate, I think there's going to be some people digging their heels. And vice versa in the WNBA, when there's a male, I think Rick Mahorn coached in the league, Michael Cooper coached in the league, Bill Laimbeer coached in the league. And I think, in those pockets, there were people saying, no, you don't understand my dynamic as a lady, and vice versa. You don't understand my dynamic as a man. But for her, I'd like for her to get an opportunity because it'd be more money than she would be able to get in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I think a hell of a coach. But the other thing is, I believe the dysfunction that the Knicks are in right now, it would do my heart some good because I'd be looking at, I want them to lose 50 games a year from now until the end of time because I don't like the Knicks, right? So with that said, it's just inherent, right? You don't like the Knicks. But with that said, why not? Why not? You had Tibbs in there, and there was fashions in there in New York that wanted Tibbs out.
Yeah.
No doubt they wanted him out, and they got him out. So be careful what you wish for. You might get it. And now all of a sudden, if Dawn Staley is a legitimate candidate, are those people who wanted Tibbs out going to embrace the fact that Dawn Staley not only is an African American person, but also she's a woman?
Mm-hmm.
How do you respond to that? Who has no NBA experience in any level?
I think another name to keep out on, maybe not this offseason, but maybe the next, is Dan Hurley, right? The Lakers tried to get him last year. Obviously, he wanted to try to three-peat. He did not three-peat. I think that's a name to look out for now, right? He said last year just wasn't the right time, and that's fine. You wanted to go out and try to three-peat. Nobody disagrees with you on that. I think Dan Hurley is a name that I'm surprised hasn't been brought up, but I think a lot of the teams that we thought were going to be in a longer search kind of decided they know what they wanted to do. They just kind of assigned their assistant coaches, the new head coaches in San Antonio. I think Memphis did it. So did Denver. Yeah. So I think next year, depending on how many coaches are fired, I think Dan Hurley could be in the conversation. The Alabama head coach may be in the conversation as well. I think there's a lot of college candidates that could be in position for some NBA jobs next year, unless there's some big name NBA coaches that are not hired. Mike Malone's another one. But Dan Hurley is one that I'm surprised the Knicks haven't talked to, because I feel like if anything now, here's a chance for him to leave UConn. They didn't three-peat. I'm surprised they haven't talked to him. I'd be interested to see how Dawn Staley would work out. I don't know how well the Knicks would do. I think it would definitely be an adjustment. I don't know how it would work, and I'm not going to sit here and be negative. I'm not going to sit here and be positive because I think it's just something. It's definitely a sit and watch, see how it plays out type of scenario because it's something we've never seen before. Obviously, the media will try to be negative. You'll have some people that'll go the woman route. That's just how people are, right? But right. I'm not going to do that because look at her success, right? Obviously, it's in women's basketball, but she's coached.
It's still success.
It's still success.
Her peers, right? So, and that's what I'm saying. That's the tough part, right? But there like you said, there's going to be people negative. That's just a given. So sometimes you got to shut some of those things out. But what I will say about these coaches that that were hired by their teams, that were assistants, give those guys an opportunity. Enough of recycling these retreads over and over and over again.
I agree.
I've seen these young guys come into play, and I'm gonna tell you this: the way the college game is being played versus the NBA play is being played, I think you're going to see less college coaches come to the NBA because it's a different game.
Yeah,
completely different game. All you're doing is just trying to be nice to a young man for 1 or 2 years, and that's it, right? Yeah, you got your NIL time dynamic of it's a business, but these guys aren't coaching basketball anymore. These guys are just kind of holding the farm down to the next crop of players come in. And then the last thing with Hurley, I would stay away from Hurley like he had the heebie-jeebies. There's no way me leading a NBA organization, Hurley would be on my top 30 list. He's an emotional wreck. He's an arrogant piece of what, and he thinks he's better than everybody that's on the other sideline other than him. Confidence is great, and that's wonderful. He's not humble. Remember, we talked about Shedeur Sanders being humble. Prime, hey, be humble, be humble. Hey, Hurley needs to be humble too. Yes, he won titles, but be humble because you got humble this past year, right? And those videos of you out there going at fans, challenging fans, and challenging players, it's not going to happen in the NBA. You're going to get embarrassed. You're going to get suspended, and somebody's going to clock you in that locker room acting that way. It's sort of like him and Bob Knight, right? Bob Knight was, in my opinion, the
Who
greatest.
was?
Bob Knight.
No, I'm not talking about who. I was saying who was the college coach that went from Michigan to the Cavaliers and he got fired after 1 year.
Yeah, that
Forgot.
was
I forgot his
he was
name.
70 years old, right? He was, he was way past his prime, and I could see him standing on the Michigan sideline. But going back to that, Bob Knight, for me, he would take your best players and put them on his team, and he give you his best players, and he'd still beat you, right? And yes, college was a place for him
Yeah.
because you got to be able to transition. I absolutely see Hurley as being a volcano similar to Bob Knight, but not as good a coach as Bob Knight. So
Interesting.
Hurley needs to stay in college, man, where he can control the narrative. He won't be able to control the narrative in the NBA.
Fair enough. No, I don't disagree with that. It's just he got talked. The Lakers talked to him last year. He's going to be in
Your
conversations. I
boys
feel
dodged
like.
a bullet. Your
No,
boys
I
dodged
agree. I
a
agree.
bullet, man.
I agree. Well, speaking of the Lakers, we got about under 3 minutes. I wanted to get to it longer, but we were talking about Don Staley and the Knicks, so that's fine. Dorian Finney-Smith declined his $15.4 million player option, and LeBron opted into his $50 million player option, something along those lines.
Yeah.
It seems like LeBron, I saw a report, I didn't keep it, but it seems like LeBron, it's this year and next year, and then he's done. That's what it looks like it's going to be. I get that's what I read. So we'll see if that's the case. I think the Lakers are booting up to build a young team around Luka. I don't know how sold they are on trying to win this year. With the way not only they're acting, but I think it makes sense, right? I think they're going to try their best, but I think it's also I think you risk the factor of Luka wanting to leave if they can't build a competent team this year. But I think Luka is going to stay. I think that's how I feel right now. If LeBron leaves, I think LeBron would go to Cleveland and kind of take a hometown discount.
Kind of finish it off, so to speak.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I would think he would leave for Cleveland. Maybe he would. Maybe he'd ring Chase. I don't really know, but
Well, rings aren't important to LeBron. He wouldn't ring. Come on, he wouldn't ring Chase. He's made it clear. That's a fraudulent behavior, man. He wouldn't ring Chase. Don't say that.
All right, so here
Bashing Bron, man.
I'm not. I'm not. You may ring Chase though.
Chaser.
He may ring Chase. I mean, McGrady. Do you know Tracy McGrady has a ring as a San Antonio Spur in 2014?
you know who else has a ring? Glenn Robinson has a ring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't AI? There's a lot of play. I think doesn't AI have one? No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. I know McGrady got one. There's a couple players that got one from just sitting over.
You gotta watch the slander on Bron, man. We can't have that on the show. We can't have the Bron slander.
He may ring Chase. I mean, I'm not. He may ring Chase for that last ring. He may go to Denver. So
Let me tell you this. You hear? I know we got a short time.
Under a minute, yeah.
If Miles Turner does not sign with the Pacers, don't be surprised if the Pacers sign Jackson Hayes to a deal.
Okay. All right. We'll have to see what happens. When we come back, we are talking NBA draft. We're going to go back into that a little bit because I want to talk more about the Wizards. But folks, we'll be right back with more content right here on the Game Time Podcast.